I think it's also fair to say that basically over the last couple of years, at the level of camera technology we have now, the reason why, like shooters, DPs, whatever, upgraded their cameras has moved from the client will see the difference to it's going to bring me personally more convenience, right?
What's new in filmmaking technology this week? News, reviews, education, insights, opinions, and ideas from the CineD newsroom with Nino Leitner and Johnny Bahiri. This is Focus Check, the weekly Cinetech podcast.
Welcome to episode 78 of the CineD Focus Check podcast. Now, this week, Johnny, I don't think we have too many news, right?
We have news, but nothing earth-shaking. And I really urge you guys to stay with us. But what?
Exactly. Stay with us because we have a lot of stuff to talk about that is kind of following up from the weeks before, which is interesting. But also, I think the beginning of September is going to be extremely interesting when it comes to, well, should we say it? Maybe new cameras? Maybe? Yeah, it's going to be a good fall, I think, this year in terms of new stuff. So let's see. Okay, but let's dive in this week. So today we'll talk about the results of last week's poll, which is where we asked, are film and TV industry job opportunities shrinking in 2025? We launched this poll last week, and now it's time to look at the results. We'll talk about the now announced Antigravity A1 8K 360-degree drone. We'll also mention the new Sigma 12mm f1.4 DC contemporary APS-C lens, as well as the new Sigma 200mm f2 DG optical stabilizer sport full-frame lens. We'll talk about the Mavis app, which is now supporting Atomos Ninja phone, which is great. Actually gives a lot more options using the Ninja phone. And this is an interesting combination, I can tell you. We'll talk about Eddy AI expanding support to 30 languages, and Accsoon CineView M7 and M7 Pro monitors getting a free upgrade to allow camera control for Sony and Canon mirrorless cameras, which is amazing, of course. Then you wrote a nice article that just went out about the Sony FX2 now finally being available at B&H, and also a bit of your personal opinion on the love and hate on this camera, and that actually now there is a $100 cashback offer. But we'll dive into this in a little bit. We'll mention I wouldn't call it affordable, but I would say a product within reach. A new robot, a camera robot, which is 20,000 pounds, which sounds like a lot, but it's actually much less than the 100,000 that we've been used to, the Mark Roberts Motion Control Cinebot Nano. We'll dive into that a little bit. We'll talk about the MAVEN filters Wave 3, which are now on Kickstarter, the Zoom H6 Studio portable audio recorder with 32-bit recording, which is now out, and the LVX SUÁREZ cinema lens collection with a philanthropic mission. Well, three more things we'll touch on a little bit. I wrote a little bit of an updated article on the Sony camera systems used for F1, the movie, after reading what I saw on the Film and Digital Times, and thankfully supported by Dan Ming, the first AC of the film. He actually helped me a little bit with this article because there's some insights from him in this as well as photos that he took. Then we'll talk about FUJIFILM raising US camera prices again. This is not the last company that will do this, but this has just been announced. Eurocine Expo, the little, it's not little, but smaller trade show, I would say, that is moving from Munich to Budapest next year. And last but not least, we'll just have a quick mention on our educational article of the week about the tilt shift look whimsical lens control over perspective and focus. Why do we do it? Why is it great? How to achieve it and how it actually works technically. But let's start off with last week's poll. So we asked, are film and TV industry job opportunities shrinking in 2025? And I think, that was, what were your expectations about this, Johnny? Like, be honest, like, what did you think? I mean, we asked it for a reason, but what was your personal expectations about this?
Where to start? I think our industry is shrinking, the number of jobs. We hear very well our colleagues. Some of them are really, really struggling. I don't want to say we should not lose hope. I think the most important thing for everyone in this industry is really keep your eyes open. The opportunities are still there. We will still need to produce content, even if the content or even the production process is a little bit different. So in one hand, I can say that, of course, it's a kind of a gloomy atmosphere all in all. On the other hand, don't lose hope. There is still a lot to do. And most importantly, and that's one of the reasons that we are reporting about the F word, AI, just get familiar with what's happening. Yeah, because it's important. You don't want to be obsolete. You don't want to give services that are actually nobody needs anymore. So I really urge people to learn, to be alerted, not to lose hope, and because opportunities are still there. And your opinion, Nino?
But what was your expectation when we started the poll? I mean, you see the results now. We'll talk about that in a second. But is it as you thought it would be? Or different?
Absolutely. That's exactly what I anticipated. When you sat down to write the poll, we discussed a little bit. Of course, we try to be as much as possible open with the answers, just to get to sense the industry a bit better. And I'll let you talk about the results, but I think it's fair to say that the significantly declined is the number one result here. You want to go through the results and just quickly?
So we had around 330 people take part in the poll, and I think it's a bit shocking. I think it's worse to me than I thought it would be. We have around, I would say, 83% that basically say that jobs have either significantly declined or slightly declined, whereas 60% said significantly declined. And then in total, it's 83% said that the job opportunities in our film and TV industry have declined, either significantly or slightly. So that is crazy. We only have around 7% of people saying that it's about the same. And I would say it's like another 7% that say that they have increased, and 4% are not sure. So very, very few people feel like they have more to do than they had last year. The big majority actually says that there are less job opportunities than there were before. Now, we had a follow-up question as well, which is asking about the reason for that. What people think is the reason for that. Why do you think it has changed or not changed for you? And about 40% said it's an economic slowdown in general. Then also 26% said shifts in audience consumption. Of course, more focus on short form, streaming, and so on. And 14% said the impact of AI. They can already feel the impact of AI. I think this is probably something that is only starting now, but it's already making inroads in some industries. We hear from commercials and some other industries that are already feeling this pain. 10% said more international co-productions, outsourcing are happening, and basically jobs are shifting to different countries. This is, of course, something that's, probably affects the US the most, and also some other Western countries where the high budget productions actually shift to a different country where it's basically cheaper to produce. Very small number blame the industry strikes, like 5%, and the rest, is a very only 1.67% said that there is stable demand and that nothing has changed. So we can see, this follow-up question, of course, is very clearly going together with the main question. So we see that the big majority of you people working as professionals in the film and TV and video production industry absolutely think that there has been a significant decline. It's not an easy time.
True. But when I look at especially the number one reason, the economic slowdown, for me, it's like a domino effect. Because of course, when there's a slowdown, it's not only a matter of less productions or the feeling of less productions, but that means that people have less money to spend on equipment, especially new equipment. And I think you and I kind of decided for ourselves that we will probably never buy a camera over $10,000. That was a few years ago, like 2-3 years ago, because there was no justifications. We recognized that cameras are good enough for many of the things that we are doing, and we couldn't see the need or the justifications to spend more money on cameras, because both of us used to buy cameras for much more money. Now, in the new economy, let's call it, in all honesty, I just don't see the reason to spend more than $5,000 on any camera. And
it's becoming much more difficult to justify such an expense. I mean, it's also, it has a lot of reasons. It's not just the slowdown of the industry. It's also the fact that the quality of the small cameras is just so much better than it used to be. And it's getting, I mean, we saw it with our recent lab test of the S1 Mark II. Even if you look at dynamic range, I mean, that was kind of the last holy grail that was still held by some of the high-end cinema cameras. And now this is even under attack. Of course, there's a lot of other things that speak for those, still big cameras, but it's becoming a smaller and smaller and smaller niche.
In a way, I also urge you guys, before you buy cameras, just really to think, don't buy because you want. Buy the cameras because you need them. I think we can all agree, spend the money in the right time and not just because. Makes no sense. And I think one thing that we all have to recognize, that we always buy old, even if it's new, meaning the technology is moving forward. And when you buy something, that means that the manufacturer is already working on something new that might be presented in a year from now. So that's really just check. And there are so many good possibilities, those everywhere now. And those possibilities will even extend, as Nino said before, when we approach IBC, because by the nature of this exhibition, there are new cameras that are being introduced during the show and a bit before it.
Well, I think it's also fair to say that basically over the last couple of years, at the level of camera technology we have now, the reason why, like shooters, DPs, whatever, upgraded their cameras has moved from the client will see the difference to it's going to bring me personally more convenience, right? Because the last wave of big updates for most camera manufacturers was related, especially in the prosumer market. I'm not talking about the high ends, but just where the bulk of the cameras are being sold, was related to autofocus performance, right? I mean, the whole Sony lineup and Canon lineup, I mean, most of the people upgraded their cameras to have better autofocus, maybe sometimes better codecs, but that is already, the codecs are good enough for what they are for 95% of productions in every camera. But the autofocus performance really made, I think, the everyday work for shooters more convenient in many areas. And that is something where we have seen a lot of improvements in the last generation of cameras. Now it's great. It's like all of them, with some exceptions like Blackmagic Design and so, most of them have great autofocus now. So the question is, why do you even need to upgrade again? Like that additional one stop of dynamic range or raw internal recording. How much do you really need that, and how much does your client actually demand?
What the client sees, I think at the end we need a breakthrough here. This is something we talked before too, either in sensor technology or literally have a must-have feature, something that people can't resist, like internal ND filter. And I feel like a broken record here, but yeah, I think the other thing that manufacturers will do is literally, when a manufacturer is seeing a success of another with a certain segment, others will go for it, and the rule will always be the same. If you don't do it, somebody else will do. So that's why I think we're going to see some nice things coming up. And that's it. But back to the poll, I don't want to divert the discussion completely.
Yeah.
That's the state of the industry, and let's hope that the opportunities are still there and that things will improve. Hopefully we can run the same poll in a year from now and just see how the
I just wanted to say the same thing. We should probably run this once
Yeah.
a year and see how things
Good.
change. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to some piece of news now. Antigravity, that new drone brand that was kind of teased like in July, I think, now announced the actual drone, which is, that company is backed, incubated, they say, by Insta360. So basically you have Insta360 technology in this drone, and that of course means it's a 360-degree drone. So they're really going into this market that is heavily dominated by DJI. Now, last week we talked about DJI's challenges right now in the US, because basically most of the DJI drones, or almost all of them, are not available right now if you are in the US, and that has to do with restrictions and security concerns, China versus America. Now, Antigravity, to be clear, might also be affected by that, because of course they also are a Chinese drone manufacturer like DJI and Autel, for example. So, but we will see. I mean, we'll only see if it will be available once it's actually coming out, because it's not out yet. It will be out, I think, beginning of next year. And basically, what is this drone? So it's a 360-degree drone, like I suspected in the podcast when we talked about it. It has a 180-degree lens at the bottom and another 180 degrees lens on the top. The two cameras you see in front here are basically for obstacle avoidance. They are not for recording images, and the actual image is generated by those top and bottom lenses. Now, I have to say, like with Insta360 promotional videos, they did an amazing job with this promo video, kind of selling you why this makes sense. And now we have seen 360-degree cameras on drones before, but they were not integrated designs. So basically you could take something like an Insta360 X4, X5 and put it somehow onto a DJI drone and another drone. And then always, of course, have the challenges of actually avoid having the rotors in shots. Now, with this integrated design, of course, this is solved because the way these two lenses are positioned, it will not see anything of the drone. Now, there is like 10, 7, 8, 9 centimeters in between the two lenses. So if you fly really close to something, you might see the stitch lines. We can only see once, like maybe we'll test it, I don't know. But we'll see in the future if that will be a challenge. But check out that promotional video, because it gives a very good example of why this is fun. Because it's not only, I think, for acquiring footage. I can totally understand why this would give you a sense of freedom. Why is that? Well, you use it with goggles like you do with most FPV drones. And they have a little controller. They call it a grip controller. It's actually the same design as DJI uses for, I think they call it the motion controller. And basically, you stir the drone with this. It's like a little joystick in your hand. You just twist your arm, like your hand a little bit, and it will actually fly in the direction that you point it to. Why is this great? Well, basically, it frees your head from where the drone is actually heading. So, for example, you can just move to the side, and you will see what the drone sees to its side while it's still flying forward, or you can fly upwards and look downwards. So you don't have to look into the direction you're flying, which is something you have to do with a traditional drone, right? You usually, if you're the operator of the camera, which you usually are on a, like most of the DJI drones, unless it's an Inspire 3 where you need a separate person actually controlling the camera gimbal. If you're controlling it, you usually look into the direction you're flying. Now, this frees you from that. So you can really look around, and I completely understand why this would give you some sense of freedom, almost feeling like flying, because you can look any direction and just fly with your drone in a different one. That's pretty cool. Also, and that's the great thing about this drone, is that it's made, of course, to actually do the shots in post. So basically, if you fly over something and you want to film something like like some sports stuff, or like a mountain biker jumping over something, you don't actually have to point the camera at the person and do the cool move while you are in air, which is very difficult to do this is a typical kind of thing that's like an has been FPV drone style, but now you can just do this in post. You just fly straight over this, whatever is happening, and then you of course do a 16:9 window into your 360 afterwards and just do it with the app. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, but did you manage to follow a little bit how the community received the drone? I mean, I didn't have the time to do this. Did you read some comments? People are excited.
People are very excited about it. I think they see the potential that it has, and I think it's a very innovative approach at the whole thing. And I understand now why they really are starting with a 250-gram drone, which is probably really an entry-level drone, because I think this can be something that's fun to fly, which is not necessarily for professional content creators. Like, I can see people using this just for fun, for the feeling of it, not necessarily. They don't even have to record, right? Because just the experience of having these goggles and being able to move around while the drone is flying in air must be really cool. And I think this is something that people haven't seen yet. Now, a couple of people have tested the prototype already. There's a nice video by Potato Chat that I saw, and he said that a lot of the things are not finished yet. So, for example, right now, I think it only does 30p, and it can't really do slow motion yet, and so on. But it's already working, and he was impressed with it, and some others were as well. So, yeah, they're really giving it out to influencers already and trying to get some impressions, and people seem genuinely excited. Yeah, it's a cool concept for sure. So let's see. There's no pricing yet. We don't know how much it will cost. Now, I hope this will be, attainable. It probably, let's see if it's going to be in the price range of a Mavic 4, a DJI Mini 4 Pro or Mini 3 or something like that, because that would be cool, of course. I definitely hope it's going to be below $1,000, maybe significantly less that because then I think they would have a real chance against DJI, especially in this entry-level market. And I think it's just nice to see DJI getting some competition and, in this drone space. Where, of course, we talked about this before, they've really perfected the kind of DJI type of drones as much as they could, I think. And we've seen some slowdown with innovation over the last few years, and they've really become very spec focused, which is not a bad thing per se. So, for example, on the Mavic 4 Pro, of course, we've seen a much better telephoto camera and so on. But it's really become evolutionary steps. It's not been a revolution in terms of what it is anymore. If you've flown a DJI Medic type drone 5 years ago and now, there's not much difference, right? You have more obstacle avoidance, a better image quality, but it's not a completely different thing. Whereas this is something completely new, I think. And let's see, how DJI will react to that. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Let's move on to Sigma. Sigma announced 2 new lenses.
That's right.
Johnny, do you want to talk about that?
It looks like that Sigma is bringing new lenses faster than I change socks. What can I say? That's really amazing how.
I hope you change socks faster.
That was a saying in English, no? No, but seriously speaking, seems like Yamaki-san and his team are very committed to bring or conquer the world of lenses, giving a very good fight to Chinese companies, but also, of course, to traditional companies. Last I talked to Yamaki-san, he was very clear that he wants to be the best in what they're doing. And part of being best is, of course, it means to bring initiatives and innovations to our market. And I think the one that really captured my imagination is the Sigma 200mm f2 full frame lens. And I haven't touched it yet, but briefly I saw that there's a lot of excitement, not only from the audience, but those who tested it already say that it's a very nice lens. And I think that type of lens is really perfect for so many things, depending on your shooting style. It's not like 300 or 400 millimeters, so somehow it's a good distance that you can reach if it's sport or wildlife, of course, depending what you do. But it's so easy to isolate your subject of filming or taking photos from the background because of the 200 millimeters and because it's a f2. So this combination is very appealing. Take that, add that the weight of the lens is less than 2 kilos. I think it makes it very, very nice package. Well, when it comes to the price, of course, this is kind of a very specific specialized lens. So it's a $3,300 lens, or in euros, this is 2,893. So the lenses will come in E mount and in L mount, and the lens will be available in September 4th, which is again very close to IBC. And the other lens is an APS-C lens. Sometimes even I keep forgetting that APS-C cameras are still around because everything is kind of moving to full frame and sometimes large format. And this is the Sigma 12 millimeter f1.4 lens. And surprisingly, it's a unique lens. I mean, this combination of 12 millimeter and f1.4, but I didn't see so many reviews about this lens. Hopefully it will come, and hopefully we will maybe take a closer look at some point after we will finish dealing with what we have to review now. And this specific lens will come in FUJIFILM X mount, in Sony E mount, and Canon RF mount. Price.
I think, f1.4 for such a wide lens. I mean, of course, it's effectively equals something like 18 millimeter on a full frame, but it is significant to have a f1.4 in this
That's
wide.
Right. And it's a $629 lens, or 500 euros. And me personally, there's always magic when you take wide angle shots, and this combination of f1.4 and 12 millimeter, and I think it's really, really great. Really.
I can see this lens, like if you have a small camera, APS-C camera, for example, a FUJIFILM, and this can live on your gimbal because it's a perfect for architecture shots.
Well, I have to see.
The equivalent of 18 millimeter is great.
Just have to see how much it distorts, basically. And if it doesn't distort that much, then I think it's, even distortion needs to be aesthetic. And I don't know if usually you don't film faces with such a lens, but more architecture or landscape.
Well, knowing Sigma lenses, it won't distort too much. Also, because of the crop, I think it should be manageable.
Yeah,
so,
let's see.
Yeah. Cool. Let's move on to a piece of news from the Mavis camera app, and now supporting the Atomos Ninja phone. Now, I don't know if you missed that, Johnny did an interview with Mavis, I think it was at NEB this year, about their app. So this app kind of is a little bit under the radar always because everybody's talking about the Blackmagic camera app. And of course, the other apps that are out there, but Mavis also has a fully featured app, which can, kind of gives you as many manual controls as possible on your phone. Now, the interesting thing is now they are cooperating with Atomos for the Atomos Ninja phone device, the hardware piece, that actually makes your phone into a 4K recorder, right? So, but essentially what you can do with a Ninja phone is use your phone to act as a monitor and recorder, and which is pretty cool, by the way, anyway. So originally this only supported 1080p, and then it was upgraded to support 4K. And now with this Mavis app, this actually unlocks a very flexible camera to cloud workflow. Because now with this app, the main camera can really act as the recorder for the high quality video inside, while the iPhone simultaneously can capture and upload a proxy file. This also enables direct streaming from any mirrorless or DSLR camera to, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, whatever you want through RTMP and SRT protocols. And also with these updates to the Mavis app, you get the external record trigger feature. So basically you can use the Mavis app as a start and stop for your camera. So it's really camera control also. So this is pretty cool. This is a nice I think it's great to see a cooperation between a software company and a hardware company in this way. Well, why should everybody do everything when, everybody can stick what they do best? And if you put the products together, it just gives a better result. We can already see some people in our comments be very excited about this combination. Somebody commented that it works really well, that he still has to, Kurt Fries Hansen, actually, he still has to use it on a shoot. But he says it's pretty cool. It still has some teething problems, he says, but in general, it's really great because he was able to select and record HDMI and external signals embedded into one MOV file, so AAC plus. So it's really cool. I mean, it seems like something. And also, even it seems like you can even do the firmware updates to the Ninja phone through the Mavis app now, which is ironically available before it was in the original Atomos app. So, they seem to be working really closely together. Now, there are some pro plans that you have to pay for, but their basic camera app, I think, is free. And there's an in-app purchases to unlock things like Frame IO support and so on. So basically, using a $200 Ninja phone device and this app, you essentially make every camera into a live streaming beast, essentially, which is great. And you can automatically generate proxies. So this is amazing, really leveraging the power of a phone. Also with this update, I think a lot more phones are supported. So basically every iPhone now that supports iOS 18 can now use the app, whereas before it was only iPhone 15, 15 Pro, and so on and up. So that's really great as well. So you can also use, if you have an older phone that you're not using as a phone anymore, you can use this as a recorder monitor.
And do you know if it's limited, if I want to transfer stuff to the cloud, or only to Frame.io, or also to, because Atomos has their own cloud service?
Well, I'm sure that the Atomos cloud is somehow integrated as well. That's a good question. I mean, it must be if they work with a Ninja phone. I think so. I don't know how open it is to other destinations as well, but just having this compatibility with the streaming standards means that, of course, I think it should be, at least the streaming part should be quite open, because RTMP, of course, is supported by a lot of platforms. So basically, I think Atomos Cloud, I'm sure, is included as well.
Good. Nice.
All right. Let's move on to a little bit of another software news. Eddy AI is now supporting 30 languages.
Yes, just a brief to any of you who can't remember what Eddy AI is doing. So literally, it's like the ChatGPT of editing in a way. And the idea was not to replace an editor or assistant editor, but this AI software is simply to help you to do some rough cuts, script, and logging. It works very nice with Adobe Premiere and DaVinci Resolve and Final Cut Pro. And the team behind Eddy AI is trying to enhance, because up until now, it was mostly in English, and then we had, I think, German and Spanish. That was like a month ago, but they announced the support for those languages, and now there is a support for 30 more languages. I think from Finnish to Turkish, Ukrainian, Vietnamese, French, Portuguese, Dutch, German, and so on. And the idea is that you don't have to translate anything to English and then use Eddy AI as an editor assistant to translate stuff, but you can do this natively. So I guess it's a great help, especially if you're doing some either multilingual projects or you simply that's your language and you want Eddy AI to help you with the editing. The main idea is to simply build faster, let's say a rough cut or long interviews, just to cut. Eddy AI is supposed to help you with isolating the sound bites that you really like, and then put them together, and from that you can go to online your footage.
Great. Sticking with software updates, we'll talk about a further update to the CineView M7 and M7 Pro monitors from Accsoon. Now, we've talked about them before. They recently became available. We did an interview at NAB about them. It's quite exciting for Accsoon to move into the monitor market. Why? I explained last time. It's basically they're using their technology that they have with, of course, I think most of their products are either called CineView something, which is wireless video transmitters. Now, one thing they did really well was their software. There's really good iOS and Android apps that give you full control over, like something like peaking and false color and zebra and all the stuff that you need for actual monitoring. And they just took what they learned there and probably realized, well, actually, we can just, buy a really good panel, like a 7-inch panel, and build a monitor around it and then just use the software we have, which is why the CineView M7 and M7 Pro is actually running Android. So it runs Android and essentially probably a modified app of what they already run in their wireless transmitters, what you can download from the app stores. It's built in. So, and this panel is really good. It's very high quality. I think it's 1,500 nits, if I recall correctly. And it is a wireless monitor that can act as a receiver. And, the M7 Pro has the antennas built in, so you don't need a separate receiver for that. Now, they just added a software update that gives you camera control for selected Sony and Canon mirrorless models, which is great. So you can use the monitor to completely operate your camera and change things like focus, shutter speed, aperture, ISO, white balance, and even trigger recordings. The cameras that are supported now are the A7S III, the A7 IV, A9 Mark III, the FX30, FX3, A7C II, as well as Canon R5, R6, R5 Mark II, and R6 Mark II, R7 and R8. And, that they say that because of the fast processors inside these monitors, there is minimal lag when you trigger recording or stuff like that. So that's really cool. If you remember, the camera control is very often a paid upgrade to higher end monitors like Small HD and so on. So it's nice to see this technology, also come to more affordable monitors in the market. And I think it should be in a short amount of time, should hopefully be almost like a standard feature for any camera monitor to also kind of talk to your camera. You simply connect your camera via USB-C. Now, there's one thing that I think would be interesting to see. I saw a comment somewhere, maybe on our site, but somebody commented, why can I not have camera control on the receiving monitor? Because it doesn't seem to be possible right now. I think it has to be connected with an actual cable to the camera. Of course, that would be nice. Like, imagine having the ability to control your camera remotely, like have all the controls on the remote monitor, something like you have on a Ronin 4D with the remote DJI transmission monitor. You can fully control a Ronin 4D with a remote monitor with very few exceptions. I think this Accsoon is probably just one small step away from that. Maybe they have to build something into their senders as well. Let's see. I will reach out to them and ask if it's possible, because of course that would be a killer feature. But just having the ability that they added now already to their CineView M7, M7 Pro series is, just gives this whole series of monitors a much bigger value. So that's really nice to see. So the pricing is quite attractive. Also, it's just $100 or less than 100 euros more for the M7 Pro. That's $900 and 593 euros at CBP. So that's really affordable pricing for monitors that are available with such a huge set of features. So Johnny, you wrote a piece about the Sony FX2, which is finally available at B&H, but you had a few things to say from the bottom of your heart about this camera.
Yes, where should I start? So first of all, let's go about the discount. So B&H is running, actually B&H and Sony running a promotion, and that's caught my imagination because the promotion in general is for a few Sony cameras from the Cinema line, but also from the Alpha line. and the Sony FX2 was already included. And I was very curious to see, in the sense of, it's a new camera, why it's already discounted in $100. And that reminded me that right after we published our FX2 review, I got a few messages from friends/people telling me that I'm the only person on earth who likes this camera. And that brought me into thinking kind of, where is this hate is coming from? It's crazy. First of all, it's a camera. It's if you like it, try it, buy it. And if not, just move on. People are so emotional about those things. I mean, us as reviewers, we really try to be to the point and see if the camera as an equipment is working for us. I personally really love the fact that camera has an EVF. I cannot work with a monitor. I cannot judge exposure. I cannot have my neck like this so many times. I can't. It's literally hurting my health. So as a EVF advocate, I really like the FX2. It has a very nice, clean picture, even if the sensor is the same that has been found in other Sony Alpha cameras, even if it's not a new sensor, but no overheating issues. The camera can run and run and run. And, I know the limitations. We both know the limitations. The whole community know the limitation. In 4K, in 50 or 60p, it does crop image. So what? If it's not for you and you're filming most of the time 50, 60p, don't buy it. Skip it. That's why I felt it was a combination. It's really an opinion piece. It started with the discount. I'm very surprised. New camera already discounted. Why? Because it's really got a cold shoulder from the community? I don't know. And then I had to write about the hate that the camera is getting without even trying. And the last thing that I want to say, the more people that get the camera in their hand, the more positive reviews and comments we're going to hear. Simply because, and I can see this already, people are getting the camera, they work with it, and they really like it. So all of us, I think it's kind of a lesson for all of us. At the end of the day, it's just an equipment. It's a camera. And we don't have to make such a big thing in terms of flaming and be really emotional about those things. What is your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. I think in 2025, a lot of people expected Sony to deliver higher specs inside the camera, apart from just adding an EVF. And also, part of the reason is we heard it through the grapevine that the original plan was to have this more affordable. And we know that because of the tariffs, this price in the US is also higher than it was supposed to be. I don't know exactly what they targeted. I can just assume it was something around $2,000 and maybe $2,000, $1,999 or something. But it is what it is now. And yeah, I think looking at the competition, looking at Canon, Panasonic, and Nikon, you can see that a lot of especially when it comes to codecs and frame rates, but specifically codecs, you get more for the money from some of those manufacturers. And that's, I think, what a lot of people expected from Sony. But this is not the camera. This is not the camera that is bringing that. And I think it's not meant to be, like you said. It is basically a
entry level.
And you look at the name, exactly, look at the name, it's FX2. It's supposed to sit under the FX3. It's supposed to have it is also cheaper than the FX3. It is supposed to have a slightly lower quality than the FX3 when it comes to all those frame rates and the crop modes and so on. But it actually adds the viewfinder. So I think that's, if this camera came out 2 years ago, nobody would have complained. I think it's just, Sony users, and we know how many people, we know from our recent poll how many people use Sony cameras. You can tell that, people were just hoping that they would upgrade to something with a superior codec internally.
Yeah. I think if it would have come together with a newer version of the FX3, then there would have been much less criticism altogether, because then Those who are really kind of a higher end would be very happy with something fresh and new. And those that are more on the entry level would love what they get. But it didn't happen. But that's also a little lesson, because Sony needs to refresh this line even further. If there will not be soon an FX3 replacement, I think Sony will suffer.
No, I think they're a bit resting on their laurels when it comes to having this big installed user base. They did a good job at converting a lot of people to buy Sony E-mount lenses after they really originally, like after Canon kind of slept after they brought out the original 5D Mark II, and then they were quite slow to move into, well, first they brought out the first cinema line camera in 2012 with the C300. They were ready, and then nothing happened for a long time from Canon. And that time, a lot of people, we know so many people that moved over from Canon to Sony at that time. And of course, at the beginning, everybody was using their EF lenses with an adapter. So at that time, they would still have had a chance to get them back, the Canon crowd. Like Canon would have had a chance to get them back. But over time, Sony brought out more and more and more and better and better and better E-mount lenses, and then upgraded everything to autofocus. And it took Canon a while to get into gear when it comes to bringing out a proper mirrorless line. I mean, the whole RF line was late. And by that time, so many people had already converted to Sony. And now Sony probably is like, well, we have a good lineup. We're selling decent amounts of cameras. We can take our time. And now the competition, Canon, Panasonic, actually has to try much harder to convert people back, which is a tough thing to do if you have a couple of lenses from one manufacturer. You cannot adapt them to each other. So you basically have to sell all the mirrorless lenses and move to another system if you want to move. And Sony probably knows that. But yes, it is absolutely time now for them to really come up with a kind of raw light codec, or just use the XOCN light that they have in the Burano and jump over their shadow, and also put this into lower end, more affordable cameras. I mean, not even their cinema line supports it, which is crazy in a way. So yeah.
I tell you, it's not only this. It's like Open Gate and so many proper support for anamorphic lenses or anything that has to do with the name cinema line, basically. So I think we both mentioned before, if they don't do it, somebody else will do this. So I hope for Sony, because the FX2 is a very good camera for what it is and for the price. But sooner or later, they will have obviously to come up and replace the FX3 with something more advanced.
And the FX6, and like everything else that is in the lineup. So yeah, let's hope it comes. Okay, let's move on to the Mark Roberts motion control Cinebot Nano. Now, this is interesting. Traditionally, those cinema robots have been extremely expensive and extremely hard to operate. I know a couple of DBs, production houses, that invested in a very expensive robot, and in the end only realized that you need very specialized, well-trained technicians to operate them. It's not like you unpack them and can just already set keyframes and make movements. It is sometimes very, very difficult to program them, and you need to know what you're doing. Now, we have recently seen some change in this, where there was another product that was introduced, the Motorized Precisions Evo, which we reported about at the beginning of this year, which is also like a $10,000 Cinebot for motion control, which is was unheard of at the time. Now, of course, with MRMC, like Mark Roberts Motion Control, owned by Nikon, being the most established company in this field, with them releasing something for, well, it's I think 20,000 pounds, around $27,000 right now. That is, a lot of people are listening because they have the most established product line. And yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's not for everybody, but I can see production houses that shoot a lot of studio stuff, like product shots of small products. this is a very cool thing to look at, because basically you have a 9-axis robotic arm with a 1 meter reach and 7 kilogram payload, which is enough for most smaller cameras these days. And the cool thing about this is, and this is a problem I heard that a lot of people have with the other cinema robots, this can easily fly on planes because you can take it apart in 3 packages, and each one of those packages will not weigh more than 32 kilograms, which is the maximum of what you can check in. So that's pretty cool. So you can literally take it apart and just check it and just fly somewhere with it, which of course opens a whole lot of possibilities with it, because the other systems are bulky and big and heavy, and very often it's hard to even get them into a car. So what happens most of the time, they just live inside the studio and rarely move outside of that studio. And this one, of course, I mean, being able to fly with it is amazing. And the second thing, they have something called push MoCo. So you can literally push it into position and then record the keyframe. So you just move the arm around, push it into position, record the keyframe, move it again, set the second keyframe, and so on and so on. And then it will just interpolate the movement in between those. And you don't, like the complicated programming can become much more easy.
So, Nino, do you think that soon we'll have those things in our pockets?
Not the Pocket, but I mean, if Blackmagic would release it, they would probably call it the Pocket.
Which would not be the
we know
pocket.
they have big pockets like this in the like a pocket can. But yeah, I mean, basically, I think it's something, like if you do a lot of product shots, and let's say you work for a company, and there are production companies that shoot all the products for a catalog or something, and they all need to have the same or similar movement or something. I mean, this is definitely something to look at. So the MRMC Cinebot Nano will be first shown at IPC. Maybe we'll check it out. Let's see. And it's going to be interesting. I also want to just see it in action, in how it moves around. Yeah. Cool. Let's move on to the MAVEN filters Wave 3, which are now on Kickstarter.
Yeah, just very, very, really briefly. Those are magnetic filters, not that we haven't seen this before, and they're made by a colleague, Michael, just that I get the last name correctly, 1 second, Michael Schiffler. And the gentleman was already running before a successful campaign. This time he's back with some magnetic filters that also have all sorts of creative built into the filters. You have a mini ring light, you have a diopter, so you can really be close to some objects, Dreamsoft, Star Walker, black and white, star effects, laser protector, and so on. So the project is still running in Kickstarter, and obviously he managed to build a small community around him, starting with the previous campaign that he had. So it's quite successful. Just check it out. See if that's the kind of filters that you've been looking for. It's just nice to have something very, very small with you that you are able to put in front of the lens when it comes to effects also. Some of those things are really, I think, very clever, including the little ring light around the lens. But hey, just to check and see.
That's cool. I never saw a ring light kind of built into a filter holder. That's a very smart idea.
Well, you're not the only one think that it's a cool idea. He has already 582 bakers, which is quite good. There's still 24 days to go. I think he raised over $205,000 US so far. So yeah, he's doing well. The idea is fine and people like it.
Yeah, very cool. And he's a filmmaker himself?
Yeah. Michael is a filmmaker himself.
Nice. Okay, well, let's wish him the best of luck. Maybe we can check them out on a camera review in the future. Let's see. Let's check out the Zoom H6 Studio portable audio recorder, which was just announced. Now, I mean, a lot of you guys might have used Zoom recorders in the past. I for sure have. I think I have a Zoom H4n, and they just released a new version of that, which is called H6 Studio portable audio recorder. Now, finally, it gets 32-bit float recording built in, which is of course great. I mean, for those of you who have never heard about that, you can compare it to having high latitude in a camera. So basically the things are much harder to clip actually. So the dynamic range of the audio is so big that you can recover basically everything. You're not gonna have clipped loud noises, basically clip audio with 32-bit. Now, in terms of design, I've heard from a couple of comments, and also Felix here behind the scenes, who is by heart an audio person, told me that the design looks a bit dated, and I have to agree. It's a little bit reminiscent of the old. I mean, basically looks the same as the old recorders, but it's a little bit flashy. Looks like something from 15 years ago, like a disco device, I don't know. But the position of the XLRs is still a bit weird. They still go out on the side. So if you see it like set up with 4 inputs, it looks like a spider with cables coming out from every side of the device. Now that's fine. I think people can work with this. What I don't quite understand, that it really still use AA batteries, because I still remember from my H4n that this is something you would it eats batteries like crazy if you use the preamps, if you use phantom power. And of course, if you have phantom power on more than one of the XLRs, it's even worse. So I don't know why not to really have a proper LiPo or some kind of battery in there that you can just recharge and come up with something, because I mean, nobody wants to. I mean, of course, on one hand, it's nice that AA's are supported because you can basically get them anywhere in the world. Yes, I understand that. However, in practical terms, they are quite inefficient in comparison to any modern rechargeable batteries that can go onto a device like that. You know, like you could even go to NPF batteries, you know, the Sony style camera batteries, for example, and have a much bigger efficiency here. But I mean, there might be a reason for that. I don't know. Maybe they hear from the field that AA's are just more flexible when you're in the middle of the jungle and you can still buy them somewhere. I don't know. But still, the preamps have been improved. So the own noise of the device is lower, which is great. And this seems to be much better. There is also a nice B&H review, which I embedded at the bottom of the article, where they took a very close look at this. So check that out if you're interested. It is still, I mean, the price is attractive. It's $399.99. And I think it's shipping already or very soon. So yeah, so that is the Zoom H6 Studio portable audio recorder. Let's move on to a new collection of cinema lenses called LVX SUÁREZ. What can you tell me about that, Johnny?
So LVX is a private company, small company, run by Pepe. I hope that I will pronounce the last name correctly, and Badalamenti. And Pepe lives in Ecuador, and a very nice person. We have several times we talked and exchanged opinions about different stuff. And he's really, really passionate about optics. And Pepe comes from and he's open about it. Yeah, like his background was a bit difficult, and making lenses was the thing that really saved him. And I like him, and I like the personal story. And he decided to, on one hand, to dedicate the SUÁREZ line of lenses to his mother, which I think is really nice. That's her last name. But even more importantly, you know, this is a very competitive. We know the lens the playground is very competitive right now. So he was thinking, how can he be different with what he does? And I will talk in a second about what he does. But the initiative that he took is completely philanthropic. And he decided that half from all the profits that he's going to do with the new line of lenses will go to support Nova Vita, which is an organization that providing babies that were born in a women's prison in Guatemala City, to give them some hope and, of course, some funds. And I think this is really amazing. And that's one of the reasons, besides his personal story, I think it's really nice that he decided to do something like this. I also want to highlight Ron from like last time that we talked to Ron from CMOD. He also, with his Apsara line of lenses, decided to do something a bit different, but also to give back to the people in Cambodia, because he's originally from Cambodia, or his family basically, and he opened an academy over there. And here to see Pepe doing new lenses. So just about the lenses, those are all modified, meaning they are all based on the Canon Sumire lenses. And those lenses you can now get for, I think, around $3,500, $4,000 secondhand. And what he's doing, there are two initiatives. One is a conversion of the lens, meaning you keep the Canon Sumire housing, you keep it, but then he's doing the coating and everything that has to do with some more painting and other stuff. That's one way to modify the lens, and the other way, the other program is really completely rehouse and modify the lens. And then that's the nice pictures that we have in the article. There's like a brushed aluminum and so on. So you keep a really lightweight the lens. And of course it costs money. He has like six lenses in his, in this kit. So it really depends if you take, the whole kit. If you just want the modification of the lens, the optical lens itself, it will cost you $4,600 per lens. And if you want a single one, it's $5,000. And if you want to do a complete rehoused, then it's a bit more expensive, of course, and you will pay, if you take the whole 6 lens set, $7,000, and if you want only a single lens, is $7,500. Again, you need to have the Canon Sumire lenses before you even start the whole process. Secondhand might be your best goal to find of those, and yeah, just check. I think the look is quite amazing. Don't forget that if you go this route, half of the profit will go to a philanthropic mission. The only thing that I find a bit difficult, I understand why, but a bit difficult, you will have to wait like 4 months for the lens to be modified. And maybe that's a little bit too much, but hey, that's the price that you have to pay for having those lenses.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Let's move on to a piece I wrote about a kind of a follow-up story on the F1, the movie shoot. Some of you might remember that I wrote a long piece about that maybe 2 months ago when the movie came out. And a month ago, Film and Digital Times by John Fowler, APS-C, actually ran an amazing piece about the behind the scenes. And he actually talked to a lot of people behind the scenes, including Dan Ming and Claudio Miranda, the DP. And Dan Ming is the first AC of the movie. And I was also in touch with him about my follow-up article, which is basically, a bit of a summary of the Film and Digital Times article, which I thought is needed in order to put things in context. Because in my original article, a few things were not quite clear. And a lot of things were cleared up in that article, which is leaked, of course, also in my article. So we know that they used a kind of pre-version of the Sony extension system Mini in order to put that on the cockpit. Now, they called this the Carmen. So there's a nice interview with Claudio Miranda in the FDTimes article, and also why it's called the Carmen. And this is something they worked very, very closely with Nobu-san, who we know very well from Sony, who is leading the cinema line. And we've talked to Nobu-san, I think 3 times before. It's also leaked in the article to the interviews we did recently. Johnny did the last one. And even 1 year before, we talked about the cinema line with him at IBC. And so basically, it's really diving into how this works and how this whole thing came about. And we speculated whether it is an extension system Mini or a version of that. And it turned out they confirmed that what they did for this movie, what they developed in terms of this Carmen camera system for this movie, really informed what the Sony extension system Mini or Rialto Mini became afterwards. So they took it's really real life experience from this Formula One shoot and that informed an actual product that now is available from Sony. What's also interesting, Dan Ming thankfully shared a lot of images and also gave us permission to reproduce them in this article from the shoot. And here, for example, you can see how many cameras they put on one of these cars. I mean, they actually used 2 Formula 2 cars for shooting. And I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's like 15 cameras at the same time on one car. It's amazing. And you can also see some behind the scenes shots here where the entire crew, including the director, Josh Kosinski, then in the middle here is Claudia Miranda, APS-C, and here on the side, Dan Ming as the first AC. They're looking, and a lot of operators that are pulling focus on a lot of those cameras are looking at a huge wall of screens and see all of those shots from those different Karman units on one of those F2 cards at the same time. So that's pretty amazing. And it's just very interesting, the whole process of this movie. I love the movie. I think it really breathed so much life into Formula One in terms of just making you feel like you're part of the action, which I am sometimes missing when you're watching it on TV because of the camera angles and that. It was quite unique. So I recommend you check out that piece and check out the original piece on the FDTimes to learn more.
You know what's interesting when I look at those screens, of course, is to see that actually, because we talked about codecs before and modern codecs or whatever, obviously they're still using XAVCI. So
yes,
that's like,
this was all shot. Yeah, that's confirmed. That's we also speculated about this in the original article. They all shot this on XAVCI. Basically the same. Well, it is the same codec you have in any of the Sony Cinema Line cameras. So they did not use RAW, but they did use, they used this compressed codec essentially also to make the big screen. And it's an IMAX movie. Don't forget, this is really released in IMAX. And it looks amazing. I watched it on the biggest screen in Vienna and it looked absolutely amazing. Yeah, so that's another example why, what we have is very often good enough, I think. Yeah. All right, let's move on to, Fujifilm raising prices in the US again.
Yeah. What can I say about this? I tell you, it seems like a never-ending story lately when company raising prices because of obvious reasons that we are all aware of. But Fujifilm in particular, they already raised the prices once, and that was at the beginning of August. That was like 10-15%. And now our colleagues and friends at DP Review asked them to be more specific about this, and they even issued a statement right from Japan that they are trying to move production from China to Japan because of the unstable market and so on. But they also say that we have to expect another round of taxes going up, and this will happen by the end of August. So that's how many, 10 days left. There are some examples here in the article, how much more we're going to pay. And, I feel it always takes two to tango. First of all, of course, it's the customers and the consumer and our friends in the US. On the other hand, it's the company, because suddenly you're being faced with such reality, and that will happen with other companies for sure. Yeah. And you have to act really fast and literally move production from one country to another. That's never too easy. But the bottom line is that the one that is really going to feel it in the pocket is us, the customers.
But why do you think, changing production from China to Japan will not have the tariffs are because things are not produced inside the US, so it will not actually have a positive impact?
Moving production from China to Japan, of course, it doesn't happen in one day. And the whole thinking about it started when China was supposed to have a much higher tariffs. That's when it started. You can't move the whole factory from one day to another. That's when it started. So now, of course, Japan also has, I think it's about 15% tariffs, but maybe still it's better than China. So I think this move is just to try and give more of a stability here. And let's see, I hope it's the last time that Fujifilm or any other company in our industry have to raise taxes because of those tariffs. This is really crazy. Of course, we're talking about different segment. That's a world thing, but I want to concentrate on our industry. And it's really amazing how it's shaking things up. That also means that our friends in the US will have to pay much more at the end of the day.
Well, I heard yesterday from there's nothing announced yet, but another big manufacturer is going to raise prices very soon too. So I think it's fair to say that they're not going to come down for any camera very soon. So if you are in the US and if you're really thinking about buying a new camera, probably, doing that soon might be a good move, because it seems like others will just pull through with the same thing. It's not like you said, it's not only going to affect Fujifilm, it's going to affect all of them essentially. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's move on to some news from Eurocine. Now, Eurocine is a relatively new trade show that actually, I think it happened 3 times now in Munich so far. It always is kind of like at the end of June. So usually the news from CineGear in LA are first shown at Eurocine in Europe there. It's a nice little show. I think Johnny and we went there twice. It's not huge, but it's very good to meet people and talk there. They put a huge emphasis on also educational panels, and I think they did a really great job over the last few years of making them better and bigger and having some really amazing people talk at those panels. Now, interesting decision to move it from Munich to Budapest. We already know that, I think last year already, this originally, don't forget, historically, there was kind of like an ARRI kind of trade show in Munich, which didn't happen for some time. And of course, having the support from ARRI at one of those trade shows in their hometown is important. And I think there wasn't so much, I'm not sure, but I think there wasn't so much connection between those two companies in the past. So maybe Eurocine just thought we can also move it elsewhere. And I think Hungary came up with a good proposal. They also have a very new exhibition center, which is called Hang Expo, and it's going to happen there. And it's going to be interesting. Maybe we'll go there next year. Why not? It's quite close to Vienna. That's like 3 hours away. We can check it out. And
I think,
true, they got a lot of support from the government as well there.
I think it goes in line with the general atmosphere of doing local, smaller trade shows. I think in those shows, the manufacturers do believe that they can really talk or get closer to the actual audience, those who might use or are using their equipment. So it is important to support those local shows. And that, of course, means let's see how NAB, IBC, those shows that we are always monitoring, how they're going to look this year. We know, of course, there will be announcements. That's besides, but I'm talking about attendance here. I really hope that people will come. And if you come to IBC, visit us, of course.
I think it's, it's nice to see a trade show actually change location, to be honest. I think it's a fresh start and it's something that people can get excited about. And also, to be honest, moving out of such an expensive city makes so much sense for attendees, because we know, from firsthand, one of our biggest challenges, and that's true for everybody who attends IBC every year specifically, Amsterdam, traditionally the host city for IBC for the last, 15 years or more. I don't know. I think they were in Barcelona a very long time ago. But the problem with Amsterdam is, as much as I love this city and I love the Netherlands in general, it's just they don't have enough hotel rooms or Airbnb. So they can charge whatever they want for a hotel room during that week. And they do. And that's the problem, right? You cannot find anything below 300 euros during that week for a hotel, like a normal hotel room, which usually costs 100. And there's so much demand. They don't have enough hotel rooms, which is different. In Las Vegas, it's better. They have a huge amount of hotels. It's okay. It's still expensive, but it's manageable. And I think that's one of the things, that's one of the challenges for exhibitions in general, is that if I'm somebody who's just going there for fun, just to educate myself about new gear, and I have to fly in and I have to pay for a hotel and everything, it's so much money you have to pay in Amsterdam to attend IBC. I completely understand why you want to move a show like that to a city which probably is more accommodating in terms of having affordable accommodation for the attendees, because this is something that a lot of people forget. I mean, yes, we go there for you guys. We report about all the new and relevant stuff, so you don't have to go there. But being there in person, of course, is a different story. I mean, it has, of course, its benefits. You can network and just check out the stuff by yourself. So, but yeah, maybe that's one of the reasons from Eurocine also to move. And let's see. I hope IBC will be in Barcelona at some point. I don't know about you.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, this I forgot now the name, but they're a very big smartphone show in Barcelona. So I'm not so sure it's going to make things cheaper. But let's dedicate a podcast before a pre-IBC podcast in like 2 weeks' time. Maybe by then there will be much more to talk about.
That is true.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's fair enough to tease, you will be back here in Vienna and we'll have a new studio. So we'll start working on this today, actually. So let's see. Next week is the last episode you'll see in this studio setting. Okay, last piece of news this week, which is not really news, is an educational article we ran about the tilt-shift look by our dear writer, Masha Dekova. She wrote about the typical tilt-shift look and the kind of lens control it gives you over perspective and focus, with, of course, some famous examples, and really diving into how this works technically. How is the tilt-shift look achieved in a lens and what does it mean? She's diving into details of our course, The Art and Science of Lenses, and by Tal Lazar. And she's really also looking at the difference between a shift and a tilt-shift lens and what that achieves, and what kind of stuff we're like miniature effect and other things that we are trying to film with this. So a very detailed article, again, with some famous examples. If you want to explore the tilt-shift look, go check that out. And I think we can wrap it up here, Johnny.
Yes, somehow it feels like a very long episode, but I hope it, that some people will find it useful and interesting. And next week...
next week we'll have an episode with Drew Shirazi, and we'll talk about he's famous for his time-lapse photography, for his, he was the second unit DP on House of Cards and shot that famous intro of House of Cards. He also worked on West Side Story as a second unit DP and a lot of other big movies. And he is actually one of the few DPs that are established that is really open-heartedly entering AI generative video. And so he's really combining actual shots with generative AI, and we're actually embracing this and working with him on a course for MZ on that, which he's finishing up right now. And we're talking to him about the process of what he discovered in this year he's been working with these tools, and how he's already kind of booking a lot of jobs based on generative AI video. And this is definitely something that all of us have to dive into. And there's a full hour dedicated podcast with him coming up next week.
Great.
All right. Thanks everybody for watching. Stay tuned to CineD Focus Check for a lot more episodes. Every Thursday we release a new episode. Leave a comment and subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Leave a comment, drop us an email at podcast@cined.com, and see you or hear you next week.
Bye.